So welcome everybody to this roundtable in the framework of Jazz Connective. So we will start the discussion just by a short introduction of all participants. Let's start with Pierre Dugelet.
So, welcome. Pierre Dugelet, I'm the director of the Periscope venue in Lyon, and as a director, I'm the leader of the Jazz Connective project.
Hello, my name is Sylvain Darifourc. I'm a drummer, a musician, and was invited by Jazz Connective to play yesterday and create a new project with two Finnish musicians, Verneri Pojola and Eero Tikkanen.
Hello, Karolina Ruspar, and the Twórnia Foundation, which is the Polish partner of Jazz Connective project. This is a venue in Poland, in the city of Łódź, as well as the Summer Jazz Academy Festival and International Jazz Platform workshop for professional artists, which Jazz Connective was a part of last July.
Hi everyone, I'm Aurélie. I'm the production manager at the Periscope in Lyon, and so I am with Pierre for this project.
I'm Richard. I work for a company called Town Hall Symphony Hall in Birmingham in the Jazz Lines department, and we're also a partner for the Jazz Connective, and it's good to be here.
My name is Jan Kopczynowski. I've been kindly invited by Charles as a press media participant here. I'm the chief editor of the German jazz magazine Jazzthetik. So.
Kenneth Green, I'm the artistic director of Improvised Music Company based in Dublin, Ireland, and we are a partner in Jazz Connective.
Hi, I'm Jan Gronli. I'm the editor of the web magazine solpeanuts.eu, a magazine for strong music, as you call it.
Hi, I'm Antoine Boss. I'm the general secretary of AJC, which is a federation of jazz venues and festivals in France. I was not invited to be partner of Jazz Connective, but I'm still happy to be here.
My name is Ami Vuorinen. I represent We Jazz, a festival, record label, event promoter, lots of different things. Not part of the Jazz Connective, but happy to be here to join in the conversation.
Charles Gilles, Vapat Anet, touring agency, also collaborating with, so I'm bringing French music to Finland and around Finland, Baltic countries, and also sending Finnish music to France and around also to Germany, existing since 1996.
Hi everybody, my name is Petra Hannus. I'm from Goethe Institute, Finland. So big Goethe network. We're situated here in Helsinki, and we're not part of Jazz Connective, but we've been collaborating with Charles a lot, and also bringing German artists and musicians to Finland. So happy to be here.
I also bring a German artist.
Yes, also.
Hi, I'm Svenja, and I'm just doing an internship at Goethe Institute.
Hi all, I'm Terhi Oen. I work with some of the best Finnish jazz acts, like Verneri Pohjola and Eero Tikkanen from Mopo. Invited by Charles, thank you.
I'm Joakim Berghel. I'm a baritone saxophone player from Helsinki, and I have a carbon neutral trio.
So, the tour is finished. Yeah. So we will start with this special roundtable. For this Jazz Connective project, we have a lot of topics, but during the two last events, the question of carbon footprints arrived on a lot of workshops and roundtable, and we never find the good timing to go really inside this topic. So the idea for this afternoon is to try to define a balance between necessity of touring in Europe and foreign and the ecological responsibility of that. We don't have any solution and we know all of us are doing job to help musicians or to tour and to go foreign. So we know what we have to do that. So we can try to explain that and maybe to put a focus of the necessity of the circulation of artists and arts. But after we will try to have a short presentation of the carbon footprints calculation method. So after that we could try to exchange altogether about that balance we need to do between these two aspects of the question. So Antoine Boss, maybe you can present your work as the HGC coordinator, the work of this network in France, because this network is not only working on that, but is mainly working on the circulation of young artists and more famous artists in France and in Europe. So I think it's a good entry to start this roundtable.
Okay. It's a bit tricky to discuss this matter, as we actually in AGC never discussed the carbon things matters. Actually, it never occurred on the table to talk about that, or at least over the last month sometimes, but it never has been a subject that a network like ours took. And still, I would say that in France, it's still not a subject for many people working in the living arts world. There has been yesterday an article about Jérôme Ben, the choreographer, and this guy just decided to stop. He's now doesn't travel anymore by plane. He's doing his audition through Skype. No more audition where people have to travel extra. So he's very into it, and it's a strong statement into the living art world where we all have political views, which would be into this matter of ecological stuff, but we never took the chance and the opportunity to discuss what we are doing as promoters, as journalists, as musicians, and regarding this matter. So everything I'm gonna say will feel a bit tricky why we never discussed this matter, because everything, the work that we have done for many years is about dissemination for artists and also for professionals. So we never really occurred to this matter. So just keep that in mind when you're going to hear what I'm going to do. 25 years ago, when the network was created, a bit more than 25 years ago, it was created because there was no like you have Finnish jazz or Swedish jazz or the Svensk jazz or Norse jazz forum. There was no federation like that in France, like I would say a governmental federation. So the idea was that the actors, the promoters by themselves were creating this network to work together and to fill the gap that the state didn't fill by its policy. There were many matters at the time. One of them was dissemination of artists, and that's the only one I'm going to focus on today. It was dissemination inside France. Back in the days, there was no internet, so it was even tricky for a band from the south of France to be known in the north of France and to play from that. Okay, so the idea was how to a regional band tour outside from their region. This is how we started Jazz Migration. Actually, that was the plan back in the days, only to work on regional to national. And then it moved to emerging artists, and Sylvain has been part of it like 6, 7 years ago. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And this Jazz Migration also has now some I would say international part because we are helping the musician touring outside from France. As probably some of you will come tomorrow in Tampere, and we are going to be the partner country to open the festival, and there's going to be a Jazz Migration focus with 3 of the 4 bands that are going to perform tomorrow night. So that was, I would say, the regional to national. Then the other concern was national to outside from France. We had a discussion like 1 hour before regarding the French jazz scene, And it is big. It's a big jazz scene. It is definitely, but it also seems big, meaning that French artists cannot only perform. And we had a discussion 3 weeks about that. You made it. You made an argument about that. The fact that it's not a necessity in itself to play outside, but it turns out that nowadays most of the musicians they feel like it's good and they want to play because it serves their music, it serves music purpose. And then our job is just to follow this purpose, just to follow this desire and how we can support and work with that. So this is what we did actually with Jazz Vegas. The idea was to say, okay, we are trying to prepare artists to what's going to happen in the professional world after they finish school, when they are around 30, what's going to happen to them. How can we prepare them properly if we don't introduce them to what's going on outside? At one point, they will have to go. They will go outside, even if it's just for one shot. If they don't want, even if they want to continue, or if they want to do it their, I would say, only way of doing it. If we have some jazz classical musicians, actually way more outside from selling concerts. But then, like Osmar, when you heard about it, that we play at least, I would say, 70% of his concerts outside from France. And even outside from Europe most of the time. And so this is how we started to think about this matter. And the first thing we decided was to build this on a basis which make the promoters the essence and the big point. We say what can make a promoter invite another band from another country is to see them live and to talk with this band and also to talk with other promoters to know how they feel about this band. It's a small world, like we said it, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat most of the things I said before, but it's a small world where I would say most of the things are based on personal matters. Actually, we talk about that. The people around this table, we probably all know each other and we all share a drink, one drink for many. After the last years. Don't look at me. No. Actually, you just raise your eyes around me when I say drinks. So I feel like I touched something. And this is how it matters. Many of the projects we led were based on personal matters and personal connection. Charles is a true example at one point. Also, the work, I mean, you presented, but the work you've done with Alfie, making you known about the rest of the promoters in France, and then going to Finland and asking for creating this bridge between France and Finland is based because they knew you and they also trusted you. And it's also the way it works nowadays. The French-Italian festival we have in Roma is based on this idea. I'm going to go through that later on. So the first thing we decided was to invite some promoters to come to France. We don't invite them, we invite nowadays 80 promoters to come to France to different events. We don't invite them to one showcase. We invite them to something like a dozen of events or festivals where the main programming is French. Ami, you've been to Periscope. Karina, you've been invited a couple of times. Kenneth as well. And all the time, the idea is to invite people where I'm running this with the festival that I'm inviting, where the wedding is in I will not invite Kenneth to a Django Reinhardt festival. I know it's not the point and it won't be necessary for either of the venues. So the idea is to match, is to have the good match between the promoters. So it allows us to invite that many people and also to create these connections because this is how it works. One small example, again, I know it's example, so it's difficult to make a general view about that, but those examples shows how the personal matter is important in this work. Back in the days, there was a guy called Bo, I don't know how to pronounce it, Bo Grønningseiter, in Norway, and he was, good enough. And Bo was very connected to the French jazz scene because he has a massive love of wine, and also because he loved jazz, of course. But there was some connection, so he has been invited many times. He also invited a lot of French promoters to come to Norway and to discover the Norwegian jazz scene. Back in the days, that was the beginning I was working here. You had so many connections between France and Norway, and so many Norwegian bands playing in France and French bands playing in Norway. When Bo resigned and then passed, that connection stopped, definitely. there was no more connection between France and Norway. And it was tricky for French bands to play in Norway. And very few Norwegian bands were playing in France also, because when you don't have this trusty person that you can lean on, and say, what do you think about that band? Or can you advise me one or two bands from Norway? Which are the bands that I should book or to look into? Then you lose that, and you go from another country or to another partner or to another people. And we had to, I faced that. We worked a lot with a guy called Øyvind Larsen. Øyvind was the North Jazz Forum director, and this personal contact I had with him started the process again. So we started inviting Norwegian promoters, a new generation also of Norwegian promoters, and they started again to invite French promoters as well. And this is how we built this project. This project called Rencontre à Lycée is a program that's gonna be held in December, where we are inviting in Paris all the Nordic jazz comets, which are the equivalent of Jazz Migration, to come to Paris for 3 days, gigs, 9 concert conference and meeting room as well. But it shows how a personal connection can make a strong difference and connect to that. So when we have done all this invitation of promoters, we started to face the reaction of the guests who were saying, okay, I saw those bands, I want to book them, what can I do? And as we didn't have any export office or any fundings for that, we decided to create some partnership that could benefit from each other. So the idea was to create partnership between one country to another with somehow the same partners from as AGC. We needed a federation or someone like that to build on the other side. And the idea was to bring the same amount on the table, same amount of money, so that we could help the French musician playing over there, and they could have their musicians to play in AGC network, so everyone would benefit from that. We started, the first one went with Austria, then we had with Netherlands, Belgium, UK, we had also with Switzerland, yes, sorry, Switzerland. Then we're supporting the project of Charles with all the Nordic and Baltic countries. We have a French-Italian festival in Roma, and we have a French-German festival in Berlin that we're supporting as well. And now we just welcomed recently a project called The Bridge, which is a connection between France and the US, and mostly the scene from Chicago, where it works on the same way. It benefits from each other by going on and forth. So when I say all of that, I never talk about carbon footprint. I mean, it's a strong. We know it. We started nowadays. We just in AGC. I don't know for the others, but we started thinking about that with Jazz Migration, for example. We do about 20 concerts in outside from France for the bands, and it's mostly one shot. We try to sell the band in some kind of at least 2 or 3 of them, because it's an easy way to package it, and for us it's better. But at the end, it's still one gig. Take the plane, do your gig, and then come back. So we try to create another way of doing this and to think about that. But it's, I mean, nowadays, just to let you know, in France, on the, I would say, political agenda, we are still on gender balance. This is the matters nowadays in France. Gender balance in the jazz and the music field, it's the matter. And I would say in the living art field, this is the matter that we have, and that most of us are really working on. And I don't know when it's going to be finished. Probably never. But when we're gonna, when something else will come, that will be it, the carbon footprint. Then we will work on that. But we are a bit late on that. I mean, some musicians, I think Sylvain could tell more about that. Have a real strong way of thinking about this, but I think it's rare. Your position and the way you think about that is rare.
I don't know.
But yeah, that's mostly how IGC has done his work over the last year and what he's doing.
Thank you, Anton. And I know it's difficult to present the work of AGC in this context, but it's important because there is many reasons that for which we are doing all the job with this network. It's a historical job with a lot of story, new things, and it's a good job because it works for the young musicians. After Jazz Migration, they go for tour, and the invitation of promoters is important for the circulation of artists and arts, and for creating a lot of projects we listen today in the European scene. So there is many reasons for this job. So it's the reality that we don't think this action with the carbon footprints issues for the moment, but that's the reality. We want to introduce the job of Charles Gilles because it can do a bridge and a link between this situation, it's AGC situation, but all the export office for all the countries are trying to do the same things to help the circulation of artists. The work of Charles Gilles maybe is a way to introduce in the first step this carbon footprints issues, but not only. So Charles Gilles, you can explain how you work.
So yes, I started to work in '96, and then I came to Finland. I came to Finland in '96. So my first tours were in this on this year. So it's 1,500 gigs, and then I was talking with Kenneth recently, and I mentioned this slow touring idea, and then afterwards, when thinking what is the thing what is the knowledge and what I have gathered through the years, and what is the what is the stamp on my work, and then I came with this idea, thinking that it's important to be aware of this slow touring. It means you reduce the speed. You think you give more time to the essential playing music, so more time for playing music, less time sitting in the buses or in plane. Or then when you travel, you use this traveling time as creatively, I would say also. So when talking with, I had a very nice conversation with Kenneth, thanks to Jazz Connective. The idea of exchanging, and when you were talking, Antoine, you were using connection all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the name was invited by Jazz Connective. It was your idea. Oliver. Okay. So connecting each other is the essential. Traveling is important, but I just starting to figure out that this slow touring is just about giving more focus on what is important is the music, the fact that musicians feel good, they have time to rest during the tour. It's not always 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning that you have to start working, and you don't travel all the time. So afterwards, after all this experience, I really started to develop this knowledge of how to really plan things smoothly and according to what's important, to make a good conditions for the music, for the musicians, and this is the main focus. And when you have this focus, then you start to organize everything according to this focus, and to put it in the right hierarchy of things. First, the music, the good conditions, and then you start to plan the logistics, and then you have suddenly space for a school concert, or for a day gig, a master class, or then you have you don't need even a day off because you don't travel so much. So it's It's everything. Everything was when talking with Kenneth. I just had a view of what I was doing, and it was thanks for this, Kenneth. It was nice to slow touring is about this, and then I wrote this article for the website of Jazz Connective in French, and it was translated into English. So at least it's kind of a statement. And now, once I did this statement, I thought, how can we go further with this idea? And then with my friends of the Goethe Institute in Finland, I really came with the idea of bringing this band from Daniel Erdmann, Velvet Revolution, and it will be the first of the bands I take till Finland. The band will travel, the musicians will travel with public transportation. They will not take a plane, but they will not even drive. They will reach the main area, which is Baltic countries and Finland, by public transportation, so trains and public buses. And then I explained this. We talked with Daniel Erdmann, and he said, "I like this idea very much," and so we are starting to work on this issue. And also, it's one other thing is also electricity and big sound system. With this band and for many of the bands, we try to make it as light as possible, which is also on when you have. I just had a tour with a piano and clarinet duet. We had 22 concerts during this tour, and out of 22 concerts, there was only one with PA. So because it was possible, and once one concert was attended by 200 persons, there was no problem. Of course, it depends on the kind of music, but this is also when it's not necessary. You don't put a PA. PA is not this compulsory. You put the PA when you really need it, and then you have a professional person to use the PA. These kind of things, they are important. If you want to put a PA, you have to have a professional using it. Otherwise, it's nonsense, and it's dangerous for ears of the listeners and the performers. So I could talk a lot about it, but now I said maybe the essential of the ideas. Please read this article. I tried to put all these things into order, and just to give the main aspects of this kind of own philosophy of touring. And in this own philosophy of touring, I try to avoid one-shot gigs. What I've done with Jazz Migration, I have been developing tours for Jazz Migration artists, which was abroad. I think I am the first one to really have toured Jazz Migration artists. Equidoki last year, they had 7 concerts. They had not 1 concert, they had 7 concerts. And then it was all in Finland, so it's much more different for them. It's another experience. And also Quatuor Machaut, the saxophone quartet, have 12 concerts. So it's more. I think it's more relevant for the music, for the experience of musicians on the road. It's something that's completely different than to arrive one day and to leave the other. So it's my main focus. I keep on doing one shots, but then of course what's important, the musicians have to have a decent fee. One shot with not a decent fee is, I try to avoid this kind of thing. So if we pay expensive travels, the fee of the musician should be at this level. Then you have to think about spending money on travels. Okay, then you have to, because the main thing is not traveling, the main thing is art, is the music. So put things into order. So I think it's the way I think. I stopped talking.
Thank you, Sham. So it's really a specific example, yes. But it's important sometimes to really go inside
Yes.
a way of work, a real example, a concrete example, so we can think about it, even if that doesn't work for other countries, that doesn't work for other situations. But and it's interesting that first you do this kind of tour, and after you put a reflection on that.
Yes.
That's another order. So you discover recently that you are doing slaughtering.
Kind of.
It was a slow realization.
So when I start thinking about this topic, I asked some people to have some advices and information about the carbon footprints calculation. And of course there is some specialist and expert and things like that, and you need a specialist to do your carbon footprint calculation. But what I discovered is that the principal axis and the principal ideas of carbon footprints is not so difficult. And when you start to think about it, maybe it becomes more real. So I like this idea that we are always talking about things at the bar, let's say, for example. So it's important to have this feeling, but after there is at one point you need to understand more and to calculate real and concrete figures, so you can maybe interact on that. And it's important, as you say, Antoine, often we are late on subject, like with the gender balance subject. It's really important, and we are so late on this subject. So for this, we are already late, so maybe we can try to start talking about it. So I will try to make a really short explanation of this carbon footprint thing. So after we can have a discussion and debate around this question with other examples. So
Do the math.
What?
Do the math.
So first of all, I asked my colleague, a friend of mine, named Alexis Pavlak, who is first a sound engineer, and after his restart his studies to become a technical director for big venues and things like that. But he really want to specialize in this question of carbon footprint, because there is a lot of link between the technical aspect of the organization of a venue and a festival and the carbon footprints question. And it's a technical and a mathematical and a specialist question. So maybe this kind of job of technician could be the good way to reinforce the capacity of people working with us, so they can maybe help us to make this calculation happen. So Alexis Pavlak told me a few things and about the carbon footprints, because it can make it possible to obtain a precise analysis to manage a reduction, if you want to manage a reduction. Obtain an indicator at the end to find the carbon footprints impact for one spectator. That is the goal of the calculation. I will show you after a while. You can prove with this calculation that the size of a structure is not really important to make efforts, because depending on the site, because in France we have a lot of reflection about big festival and carbon footprints, but it's also important for small venues and small events. And after, of course, if you do that, you can take, it's another discussion, but you can take advantage of this moment of carbon assessment to take the audience and all the people around the project with you with this goal of carbon footprints reduction. And it can be really an argument for the RP work and the communication work. Of course, it's not the main goal, but it could help at this point too. And after all, I'm sure we will have some a goal from the government and from Europe soon. And it's important for maybe the jazz and improvised music sector to be maybe first on this question, so we can use this advantage to increase our fundings by being better on this aspect. And I'm sure it's possible for the size of the sector, it can be an advantage. So, to calculate the carbon footprint, the better moment of the roundtable. There is three scopes. Don't ask me why.
No, you don't.
1, 2, 3.
Nice back.
And when you do a total calculation, you need these three scopes. These three calculus. The first is maybe the one we all know, is the calculation of all the energy of your company. So I take the example of a venue. So it can be your gas for the energy, gas, electricity, everything needed in a venue. It can be your salaries, how they come to work. It's important. Transportation.
Workers.
Salaries, right, the workers.
Right.
There's the workers of the venue first, and the workers of the venues. After, of course, you can add different things, as if you do the same for your home. It's the same principle. Your ashway and all these things. So you have this first. In this first scope, you can add your audience. It can make the difference if you have an audience as a festival. For example, if your audience come to your festival by plane or from foreign, it can be really an important carbon footprint for a big festival like the Jazz of Yen or like other festival who have foreign audience. It can be really important, and this is in the scope 1. So when you do that, you never speak about the musicians. And it is really important to have the impact of the travel of the musicians. So that's why there is another scope, the scope 2. For a non-cultural company, this scope 2 is about everything they buy to sell after. So they buy some materials, after they transfer the materials, and after they sell the materials or transform. But we use the same things for human. You are like a material. When I buy a concert when I buy a concert of Silva, it is
Exhibit A.
Yeah, it's the sculpture. It's a concert of buy, and that's the difficult part for us because we can calculate that, and we can ask someone to calculate that. It's not too expensive because it's not too much complicated. You can do your own work and analyze everything, and after there is some calculation ratio, so they can put a number of carbon things, and after you can divide by
number of audience and
and you have the result. But if you only do this part, you forget the main things. And 1 year ago, when I first heard about that, I was like, it's not the real life because our real impact is here. It's important to work on that, of course, for the energy, for things like that in your venue. And maybe we did these things since few years. If we are not too stupid, we try to close the door and things. So that's the main point. After we don't buy too much other materials than musicians and concerts. It's the main thing. And after you have the scope 3, I'm not sure we really need that. It's really complicated because it's the foot. If I understand well, it's the carbon footprint of everything you have in your company. The carbon footprints of the materials of you buy of the speaker. So if you buy a speaker, you have to calculate where it was built, how it was built. Is there any travel for all the materials you buy? So it's a bit complicated, and maybe it's not essential because it's not the bigger part of our carbon footprint because it's here. So the difficulty for us is, for me, it's to combine the calculation between the venue and the tour.
What?
Because it's true. Because if we want to be precise and efficient. If you want to be efficient, we need this calculation, and it's really not simple. The good way, if we need this figure, is to ask the tour company to ask, for example, to ask Charlie. And this is a venue where your band is playing, one example, and this is you. So you can do your scope. Your scope one. Your scope one for you is all the flight tickets you buy, all your train tickets, and your car and your minibus for the tour. You can calculate everything, and for example, you can divide by the number of concerts. So if you do your carbon footprints after, as a venue, we can calculate our scope one, and after we can take just one part of your scope one.
Okay.
And after we have a good image of our carbon footprint for the venue. And you have a global image of the carbon footprint for your tour. So if it's a sector question, we can ask big venues and people with money capacity to calculate the tour, maybe for the tour manager or for the artist without any tour manager. So maybe we can spend money to try to calculate when you have an artist to try to take all the information from the tour the artist is going on, so you can calculate the whole tour and take your own part. But it's a lot of work for the venue to calculate all the tour. For example, if I have 100 concerts by year, in one way I have to calculate all the footprints of all the tour to have this part for my 100 concerts. So it's a lot of work. But after they use, if you have all the figures, and for example the number of kilometers, the type of transportation, after they have some big Excel sheet with all the figures, so they can calculate easily the footprints. But you need to have all the figures. For example, for a tour, you need to know the number of dates, the distance between everything, and the way of transportation for each
means of transportation. Yes. Okay.
So that's it. After you divide that by a number of with the audience, and for Charles, you can do the same. If you ask, so it's a lot of information. You can ask for each. You have these figures. You could easily add these figures because you need it for some application.
Yes. So always giving number of audiences. It's clear.
So for you, Charles, as a tour manager, you can have the carbon footprints for one spectator for your tour, and after for one of the venue of your tour, they can have the carbon footprints of their own venues by spectator if they calculate all the tour of all the musicians. So it's not so complicated.
Yes,
what is the unit of measurement? Is it joules?
It's a ton per spectator. For example, you have your personal carbon footprints. You have one for your transport, one for your everything. It's ton by person.
Tu peux l'écrire? Can you make ton?
What is in English?
Ton.
Ton. 1,000.
1,000.
1,000
Yeah,
grams.
but
It's called a ton in English as well.
Yes.
like that. Right.
So this is the unity. We noticed that when looking for a specialist of carbon prints, we were not much in advance asking, but anyway, they are all overbooked because everybody wants to make calculations. So little by little, we have to understand ourselves how to calculate this. It's just Antoine said we are trying to get into this issue, and so it's the same for everybody.
Yeah, if you are able to take all the figures, after you can ask the specialist to make the calculation with the figures. It's not so difficult because there are big software and all the specific figures.
You have to feed a lot of information.
That's right. You have to feed a lot of information.
I think in France, on the SNCF, the railway company, you can find for each train you take, when you buy your ticket, you have your carbon footprints.
The Norwegian piano player Jon Balke, he have been talking about this for years.
Jon Balke?
Yeah, and in 2014 he should go to two tours with the Jökleba trio, with Audun Kleiva and Per Jørgensen. And the first started in Bodø up north and ended up in Bristol in England. The other one was from Istanbul to London. And he wrote a diary for the Salt Peanuts website, so you can search it up there and read his diary. It's really interesting. It was strike in Italy, of course, and all the problems. In the Eastern Europe, they tried to find out what kind of gas they used and everything, but it depends on the prices that day and all that stuff. But their conclusion was to travel by train, the best thing to do.
Yes.
For the musicians, you don't have to spend time on the airport, and they can relax on the train and stuff.
Yes.
But it was a lot of problems. But read it. You can search on Jökleba on Salt Peanuts, and really interesting. And it's in English.
Very good. So yes, it's the musicians themselves traveling. They feel this. We say in French, empirique. It's your own experience, which shows you that there is no point in queuing security and arriving 2 hours before and this and this. And then you cannot take your instruments. Baritone saxophone players, it's a nightmare. And so all these issues, when you get into a train, normal train, sometimes also it's complicated with SNCF. But anyway, it's not the same nightmare that you have for traveling. So you are more relaxed. Then you can talk with your friends if you have to plan. We were talking with Daniel Erdmann. He said yes, much. Then you are with the trio, the band. They can plan their work. They can exchange. It's much when you are in a plane. It's not the same. You can move. You can go to toilets. You can do this. It's much more. It's different way. And if the musicians themselves they find out that that's the best way, even going to Istanbul. So it's clear that the experience of it is much more positive when you just limit the travel by plane to what is compulsory.
For example, maybe if you are programming a tour, you have a first call for a festival in Austria, for example, and after you many times you try to find a second or third date around. And the first calculation is only about money. If you try to cut the price of the flight between two, because you find another concept. But I think if you can just add this question of carbon footprints, it's another figure. So you can, of course, the money is an important thing, but you can add this in the calculation.
Yes.
Is there any web page or website that kind of has the fields that one would need to fill out and automatically would calculate on the sender side and on the receiver
when you
side?
do, but I'm sure some engineer of our technical specialist in our sector could do the formation. And when you do the formation, you have access to the database, if I understand right.
Yeah.
So I think the best way to do that is to try to put a few people in these formations, so we can have specialists in the jazz sector for our calculation.
It's getting trained to understand more.
And after, when they have this training, they have access to the database for the calculation. It's not public.
Yeah, but you could also, I mean, like a lot of people don't know where to begin. You know, in terms of the hardest thing is starting to get a measurement. You know, because you simply cannot manage what you cannot measure. It's always going to be just talk until there's a bottom line number, and that people say, well, we need to do better than this in the next, 365 days or whatever you want. So I just think it'd be a good use of money, of resources, to even have a very simple site where you just plug in some numbers, like a Google sheet or something, and then it would actually give you even a ballpark.
I'm sure for the transportation it's possible.
Yeah.
Because, for example, for the train you can find it, and I'm pretty sure for the flights you can ask, because maybe there is some laws that say they have to give you the calculation. So maybe for the transportation, it's the bigger figures, the bigger issues, and sometimes if you just look at all the little question, but just take the bigger issue is the transportation.
Yeah.
So now it would be very nice to hear Joachim, because he's done nice calculation here, carbon footprint for touring bands, and for instance the example from Paris to Tallinn, which is when I 3 times I have had bands traveling from France, Paris or Rouen by car till my area, Baltic. So this is an example. And so Joachim, can you comment on so you have got the source is the Finnish Innovation Fund, Citra, and ecopassenger.org. Please, can you tell us more about it?
Well, first of all, ecopassenger.org is what you are looking for, kind of calculating all the footprint for travel. But the problem is that the data is very different, and they only can calculate the approximations of that. Whatever car you use might actually have a totally different footprint, and whatever train you use, like if you use a train in Poland compared to using a train in France, it's a 10-time difference between the carbon footprint, even though both figures are really small, so it's always a good figure anyway, but it's amazing how different it can be. But this Finnish Innovation Fund is a kind of a neutral place for information in today's world of very corrupt information, and remembering that Finland is still the least corrupt country, even though it's not uncorrupt. But anyway, they don't have a reason to change the figures. They use as neutral data as they can find, and they have a lot of environmental experts working in there, and so they've calculated these figures that my math is based on, and what I've found is that one of the biggest things you can do is to use renewable diesel, for example. Diesel made out of trash is a big important factor in diminishing your touring footprint, and of course I like the idea of being able to work in a train, and the train is still the least polluting form of travel, no matter how good the diesel is, but still. But gets the footprint gets a little bit smaller when there are many people sharing the same car, because it really doesn't, it doesn't really use much more fuel if there's 3 or 4 persons. It's not like it goes up 30%.
You mean the more there are people in the train, the less footprint there is per person? Or?
That probably doesn't mean any difference also in the train. The mass comes from the train itself and not the people. But the problem for Finns is that there's kind of no way out from here which wouldn't use nature really a lot, because that I was going to Jazz ahead and I thought that I'm taking the boat because that's probably much better. And I found out that it's like 2 times as bad as taking the plane. And
it's a big issue. The cruise, it's awful.
Yeah.
Cruise,
Yeah,
boat,
it's the worst.
it's really awful.
You'll have to sail, which is
yeah, that's right.
There's actually new boats that use wind. So you have to choose that one. There's one boat from out of Finland, you can say.
But there's going to be a second, I heard.
Okay, great.
For a while, so you know.
Okay.
It's going to be a green other, but this you mean with grace.
Yeah, grace.
And what else? Can you find something that raises questions in the paper if you see me?
It's very important. But after, we have to put a value on that. And this value needs to be compared to the value of the artistic goal of our work.
Of course, yes.
But to discuss about that, we need to make the calculation, and after we can, as a personal worker, as a promoter, you can just
make decisions.
Yeah, make decisions with the values and put value on the 2 things.
Being aware of, yes, sir. But this is so now we are starting to have tools to calculate, and it's also kind of a feeling. How do you feel each time you fly? How do you feel? And each time you are in the train, how do you? It's also really completely personal feeling. How do you experience the way of being on the boat, and you see this awful amount of carbon footprint, because it's so, and it's just awareness about how does it feel to when I plan touring, I try to think now is it useful to fly, or is it useful to just to also the physical how do you say how tired you get also after this. So it's once again, it's for me it's empiric, but then afterwards I think this could have been, so you make a mistake and then you try not to make it again the next time. I think we all do this in everyday life.
And for example, if you open a new venue in the countryside, on a big way, if we can define a way between Ljubljana and Lyon, because we know there is a lot of people going from Lyon to Ljubljana, playing in Lyon and playing in Ljubljana. So if you create a venue in the middle of these 2 towns, maybe you can imagine the business model of this venue differently, because it's useful for the carbon footprints, for everything. So maybe it's not a lot of money for the gig, but it's at the right place, at the right moment, so you can stop, having a good night, and being maybe in front of 50 or 60 people. But if you put all the advantage together, it's different.
So we have the examples of, for instance, Wim Wabers in Belgium, in Ghent, with Handelsbeurs, his venue. So it's you can have more information in this Take the Green Train in Europe Jazz Network. So when we were talking in Novara for the European Jazz, this network meeting, we this Wim Wabers, the director of the venue, explained things about how people coming by bicycle to his venue, they can, during the show, they know they can plan their bicycle to be repaired. So they buy their ticket, and they know they come with bike, and during the time of the concert, somebody is repairing the bike. You can book also the reparation of the bike during the show. So at the end, they get back their bike, and it's included in the price of the ticket.
Wow.
So things like that. But these are when you start to think about really concrete things, you happen to take these kind of decisions, which are really eco-friendly, indeed.
I think it's actually very important to mention as well. I mean, the Take the Green Train, manifesto, which was essentially created through the network about 4 years ago. I mean, there's a very well put together manifesto on the Europe Jazz Network website. However, there hasn't been a lot of action since the edicts of the manifesto were created. So there's a lot of really strong and very good and positive sentiment there, but there isn't yet an action plan. So we had Wim and myself had a working group in Novara where we said that we would be committed in 2020 to turning the manifesto into a series of actionable steps, and that if there are any examples throughout the network, we will put examples of this on the website so that people can get an understanding of the practical realities of it. I didn't know that story about getting your bike repaired. I think it's fantastic, because I'm so lazy about getting my bike repaired. I'm going to see a great show, and it's fantastic, and it's so practical. So if anybody wants to read more information on that, it's on the Europe Jazz Network website. We need to actually have,
because I think Wim is a biker. The manager of the venue is a biker himself, so he knows what kind of requirements and needs you have when you bike. So he thought about his audience. If you want to encourage your audience to come with bikes, so you have to offer services which are really concrete. And so this is a very fine example. And so we should maybe AGC should start to put a link to this, to Take the Green Train, just to, because somebody is already doing the work of thinking, so just to start to connect things. So the French promoters, in the AGC you have festivals and also clubs and venues, so everybody can start to get examples. So Wim is doing this in Ghent, so what similar thing we could do, and Pierre with the Periscope, whatever small step it is, it's just create. It's a good dynamic just to check what is happening abroad. So Belgium and France, and we should all put this. It's what EGN is doing. So in this manifesto, you are putting examples,
practical examples. Yeah,
practical examples.
It's because a lot of people don't know where to begin or how to contribute or how to, what I mean. Because what you're really talking about is hyper-local issues that actually can be transferable. So, Wim doing that in Ghent, could be easily transferred to Dublin, even though the weather is shit and we don't ride as many bicycles. But but there are some things that are transferable and there are some things that are not. And I think it's the bigger the list of innovative ideas, because I think we also have to be a little bit creative about how we offset our carbon footprint. It doesn't have to be a direct. It doesn't have to be direct. So, for example, there's a festival in the west of Ireland called the Galway Jazz Festival, and this year they they made a very, very strong stand on this thing, and so much so that they basically, all of the audiences who came to the shows, they asked the audience, so that what they're going to do is they're going to calculate their carbon footprint for the whole festival, just like we have here. But they're going to offset that for the rest of the year themselves through very interesting ways. But they've asked the audience who are attending the shows to consider not taking a holiday abroad in the next year to offset their own carbon footprint as an audience member for attending. So that they've created a really strong publicity story around this, and they didn't do it for publicity, but basically they've made the audience aware of what's happening. You know what I mean? And they've allowed them to be an active participant in reducing the carbon footprint of the creative practices, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
And who knows how it's going to.
Actually, you need to calculate that to see the balance between all the
Exactly.
artistic program.
Yeah.
I don't really know if it's like that. Because depend of the programs, but depending on the program, if they are, we don't know the program.
They also made a very. They said we're not going to program as many international acts. We need to celebrate the acts that we have in our own country as well. So they did a lot of. You can check out the website Galway Jazz Festival. They actually commissioned new work, a new piece of work based on Greta Thunberg's dog called Roxy's Head is Melted, which was a new piece of work that they commissioned for the Galway Jazz Festival. So I think it's really interesting.
Yesterday we were talking about agent and booking agent and this kind of stuff, and we can imagine something to put a value of their job through the carbon footprint things, because if a booking agent work very well, you can find a logical tour with small venues in his network, so I can do a really good tour for the carbon footprint impact. But for the moment, there is no advantage to do that.
Well, there's no incentive, because I think this requires, like, there are not a lot of people like Charles who is really thinking like this. So to be fair, Charles is almost an edge case. He's not in, you know what I mean? It's not mainstream in any way, but it's a great example. But for this to be successful and to be sustainable in every sense of the word, it needs both the sender, which is the booking agent stroke tour manager, and the receiver, which is the venue stroke festival, to be on board with each other and an agreement. I think that's where the power of networks comes into play, because I think that promoters, bookers, and the artists themselves have an incredible amount of leverage to say, well, no, we want it to be this way, and we will only do the concert if we can do it by train. If it's under, I think Vin said in Novara, it was quite arbitrary, but he mentioned, let's say your travel is less than 600 kilometers, then you should take it by ground transport. If it's more than 600 kilometers, you can look at air travel. But it's a very arbitrary thing, but you have to start somewhere. So, so the artist can actually, or the booking agent or the manager can insist that it needs to be done this way, and only that way then can because if the case is right now, if an agent, agrees to a show and they say, look, we want to arrive there by train, and it's going to take longer, it's going to cost more, the venue or festival will go, no thanks, we're going to move on to something else. I mean, that's the current reality. So we need to kind of push back against that,
And the reality is that more venues and festivals now don't really care how you get, because you have to cover your own travels.
Yeah, it's because
you rely on that. So I think it's like the shifting the pressure from artists and putting it more on the festivals and promoters is the right thing to do. And it's when I was thinking about the touring thing, it was more like programming, responsible programming.
Responsibility of the promoter.
Yes, because we encourage our artists to go abroad and to play with more gigs abroad, and this is what we do, working with young artists. And now we should say that, okay, so you have to really, maybe not accept offers when it involves too much traveling. Of course, it's impossible they will accept all kinds of offers because they want to play abroad. But if we put the pressure on this, I don't know how, maybe by imposing some limits. I don't know, maybe that, for example, you can only have this and this
Maybe just if you ask the figures for this is the first step. If you ask, give me your carbon footprint.
Yeah, and this might be, of course, this only works when there's money involved. So, for example, we could impose some penalties on the actors that have too much carbon footprint, or because Canada does it this way, so that they have this network of festivals that they book artists for 2 weeks, because it's too expensive for these festivals to cover intercontinental flights. But still, they have to fly between the cities. Yes, so
which is huge.
Which is huge. So maybe that's the solution. Just
what strikes me, and I would say also concern me a bit, is that we cannot have this. I think we cannot have this discussion without thinking this inside something global, which is the music industry, and more global is the capitalism world we are living. When I say that is because most of the solutions we are mentioning here are solutions that are included inside the capitalism world. It's printing papers over reused paper, so it's also producing something again. It's changing plastic cups for other new plastic cup, but every year you take plastic cup, you reprint plastic cup with a new logo of the new festival because you think it's a nice way to communicate and to do publicity. And even the Vim thing, it's about money. It's about you save money. You don't have to go to a shop to repair your festival, and you gain time by putting your bag there, and someone is going. It's inside the price, so it's consumerism at one point. The way to attract the audience is like, but I'm just finishing. I know you're gonna react. So when I say that, I don't mean it's bad. I just think this is a massive concern, of course, and if we want to set up, like Charles said, all personal matters, should I take the train, should I take a plane extra, and then something global, having some impact in this world, we have to do something, but I think we have to do something that thinks differently from outside of the box, if I could say, and it can start on one level. You mentioned the promoters. The fact to have the idea of having a tour, going abroad, taking the plane or the train or whatever, and then trying to do not one shot, but at least 2, 3, 4 gigs. The only thing we need is promoters that are ready to accept that the band has played in the next city, 200 kilometers.
Which is usually the opposite.
And they don't say, "Oh no, I want premiere. I want to be the only one." If you start because the promoters, even if we all think that, if we all are here very open, and we are, I would say, on the left side of the political scale, we always think we want premiere, and it's the basis of the capitalism world. At one point, we want the new things. We want something new. In France, it's crazy how the system, the funding system, is based on getting a premiere. You need a new, and Sylvain probably has been asked many times, "What is your new project?" But I want to play with the same trio I have 5 years. No. What's the new project? What is the new control? What do you do? We have to think different. It is, but it also needs some things for us. And I wanted to finish on a good note, because it's none of that is bad. It's just what you're doing, this slow touring, is at one point the exact opposite of the capitalism one. It's slow, and it doesn't produce, and it takes time. And this is the thing, time. Because the other thing is that you take the plane because you need you don't have time. You don't have time to take a car or a train. So you have to be there because you have another gig later, and this is also something.
But that's the reality that we're in, for sure. I mean, we live in a capitalist world. I mean, creative sector. It's nice to say that we're doing different things, but we're not really. To your point, however, the thing about capitalism is that it's directionless in one sense, in that we're going to self-drive ourselves off a cliff through capitalism. Do you know what I mean? Because before we acknowledge that things are fundamentally changing in that world. So I think that it's nice to kind of have a discussion about this. But if everybody isn't kind of in agreement, even if it's a microcosm of what is essentially a larger capitalist conundrum, then it's not going to actually.
It's true that so promoters, they really should start to understand the needs of the artist in a way that, for instance, I was talking with Stefan Oliva, the pianist. We were touring in September, October, so they had these 22 gigs, and of a project, very beautiful project about Gershwin. They only did it 3 times in France, in 3 festivals. So they happened to, I gave them the opportunity to do it, I mean, in 3 years or something. It's amazing being, because they have, to exist as an artist, you need to have a lot of different projects. So I think what is important is to give the artist the possibility to develop one thing and to go deeper, not in the same way. Stefan said, okay, now I'm doing one project on Tuesday, and I will go to another place to set another project. I will play 4 different projects in 1 week. So the way I will be able to focus, I will need to put myself in a different state of mind for every of the project. Now they were in the state of mind of doing one thing, and I could hear how they were getting deep and deep and deep inside it and reinventing. So it was luxury for them. So this is, I think, something important. You don't need to do 22, but if you can do 5 in France, it's a challenge. It's in 5 times the same thing. Then for the music, I think I see Silva. So this is one thing. So the promoters, I think touring is not. It's important, touring with the same project, because then it's the way the music develops. So nowadays it's not. It's gone the time when a club in New York or Paris, they had for the same band for 2 weeks. They were playing, the same band was playing 2 weeks. This is gone. So at least we have to go back to the possibility that to play with the same project in the same area for 5 times at least. It should be a standard, but it seems to be very, very challenging.
Yeah, and I think the main point to create this possibility should be to exactly what you do, to create local network.
Local, yes.
Yeah. For example, I tried to do this in UK, and it was successful. With when I have a band, a new CD or what, I asked for Tony Dudley in Birmingham, for Paul Bream in Newcastle, Oliver Whitling in London, and we can do with the help of French Bureau Export or what to do only per train. It's only so easy. UK is really close of Paris, so no problem. I tried to do the same in Canada, and there is no network at all. And for example, Rainbow Roberts, who took in Vancouver, we took of Ken, the success of Ken. She doesn't want we came for one concert because it's stupid. We have to travel for 12 hours. She said, "Okay, guys, you are here, so we will do 2 concerts. I give you a master class, blah blah blah." A lot of things. That's really kind, but it's 12 hours. It's 12 hours of a plane, of a flight. We have to do really more concerts to divide this carbon footprint. And I ask help for musicians, for journalists I know in Canada. I send a lot of mail. There is no network. They don't work all together. And I think that the first step could be this, to create local area where promoters are talking and working all together, and it could be a solution to divide the carbon footprint for musicians.
Yeah, I was gonna exactly make the same point, that if my band gets asked to play somewhere where I don't have a strong network, I always try to work with the promoter to try to find out who else could have the band, but it's very rarely successful. So then we have to say no, because we try to do bigger entities than just one gig. So I think also from the promoter side, looking from this angle, it would be so important to have the
It's true.
connections.
Promoter is not a tour booker. So promoter is only interested into I can have this band on this day. So I mean, booking tour, you have to really be aware. You have to understand the needs of the promoter, and inside of network and of different promoters, and to combine it. So this is very challenging, but it's also I ask from promoters collaboration. Can you help me? What could it be? Who is interested to do something on a Monday? In Finland, I always find something on a Monday, because musicians, they are here. Monday is a day you are living on Monday. It's existing. Monday is not. So you have to play. On
there is a capitalistic solution.
Yes.
Because if you put a limit and money on the carbon footprints, a promoter who wants this band will be forced to find a colleague to have the band together, because there is a limit of carbon footprints. It's hard, but could be.
And then another thing also, we were talking with Pierre yesterday about touring periods. So also you have Monday, but you have also January, February, and you have August or September, beginning of September. These are also these are periods in which you still exist. So you and then it will be there is kind of a rush into October, November, and March and April. So we should also start to spread the scope into this big beginning of the year and end of summer, and this. So just to have also, it's good for the audience that they have on it's beginning of September they can go to shows. So this is also. Not everything, not always the rush hour. So.
Yeah, but this, like, if we approach it realistically in August, September, the people just don't go to concerts.
Yeah, in September, I'm sure they go.
In September, maybe September, because they're still on
Depends
vacation.
where you are.
Yes.
But the end of the year is because all of the funds that are available for the festivals, which are distributed at the beginning of the year, which means that basically half of the, at least this is in Poland, but in many countries, that it's for the first half of the year nothing basically happens because everyone is waiting for the decisions.
Yeah, but sometimes we only view the problem through the networks, and the problem with the network, like I just say, even if it's a big network, we try to have the small venues, but professional network is not for really small venues and countryside small clubs. And I think if you want to really do this job, you need to have the formal networks to find the better venues and the big festival, but you only need this informal network in each country, in each area, to find a smaller venue and smaller club to build your tour. And for a network, it's not. I'm the board of IGC, but it's a really big issue if we have to find all the small venue in all the countryside of France to have this, and they are not paying the good fees, and we have other problems. So it's not professional venues, and I think as you work with non-professional venues.
Also, yes.
So to do that, it's impossible to focus only on the professional network. Sometimes they call me at the Periscope, and the Periscope is not free, or maybe I don't want to book this band, and they tell me, oh, you are the only venue in my own region, and no. No, there is some theaters, there is a lot of places. Okay, it's difficult to go there. I don't say it's easy, but I'm not alone. I'm your only contact.
That's the point.
That's the problem. And they have maybe better money than others, but I'm not the only. Because there is music everywhere in the region.
One aspect which is maybe very different from what we talked about, and it's a question to you also. What about the finances, and does it affect, I mean, this brilliant idea, does it affect the salary of musicians and yours? Because my experience just a few weeks ago was, it was not about work, it was about a holiday trip. My nephew and me and my wife, we traveled both to Italy from Germany, and I choose for one trip, I choose the train connection between Münster and Imperia and the Riviera in Italy. So we compared, and my nephew took the plane from Hamburg to Nice, just to go by train to okay. So the difference was huge of the price.
The
talking
travel-
about money, the travel fare.
Yes, yes.
It was 25 bucks for the plane from Hamburg to Nice, and it was, let's say, 200 for one-way trip. 200 euros or more for each of us to travel by train, and a lot of time, of course. So, just provocative question.
Yes, yes,
What's
yes.
your experience? Because we didn't talk about it right now. Making money on a tour. Does it? Nobody wants to pay on top. And what is about this?
It's so when I book a tour, it's like a small festival. It's so a tour, and I put this into hands of the companies representing the artist. So first of all, I'm privileged to have support through a contract with the Affichma. So for the LGC, sorry, historically Affichma before, it's like in '96 when I started, I had started a relation also from the beginning with public institutions in France. So it was, I made it clear, it's not, we know all the reality of this, so there is no, you cannot earn a living with this. You need to have a funding to make it work. So like my work as booker and tour manager has been included into a yearly subsidy, and now it goes through a yearly contract that we have with the agency. So my festival is a program of tours for the French artists, and then so my this work I'm doing is included in this subsidy, including also some participation to travel expense. So when we have this entity which is the tour, there is a special funding for that, which makes, and the idea is always that at the end of this, when we gather all the fundings together with the artist, everybody each day when artist is working is getting paid, of course. It's no use. We are using public funding, so it's no use to use public funding to have workers being not decently paid. So, but I can say that the managers of the companies of artists, they love this because it's so seldom they have the possibility to have this entity, which is the tour. They never have this. They always have a tour which is many months, different, as I said, different project for an artist. It's so seldom that they have one band doing within 2 or 3 weeks. So then of course now all the societies, Adamis, Pedidam, SACEM, French Authors Performance Society, they love this because okay, they know it's a tour, they know me, and they know. So it's a system that they know it's relevant, and they can interview artists at the end, and they know. So I have this kind of, I am helped by the reputation coming through the years. So now it's the funding, the French funding system makes possible to have a decent fee and decent funding for everybody involved working in the project, including myself, including if there is a sound engineer, he will be paid also, and etc. etc. So and now your example is about a mean of transportation, for more expensive. it's if it's better for the logistic of the tour, we will take better. Because I'm touring myself, so I know now we need a good hotel. Now we can have a cheaper, like a cottage or whatever. It's when being myself, together with the musicians, I can anticipate and know. Sometimes you need to put money in this hotel, or you need to put money in a good taxi or whatever. It's not always luxury, but you just you use the money wisely. It's just to be wise, and maybe Sylvain wants to comment.
I would like to complete your reflection because you speak about. Unfortunately, this is. It's unusual to have this kind of tour, and mainly the problem we have is that we are doing one-shot concert, and to add for your reflection about tax, the carbon footprint, there's a problem for it's becoming more fun today than 5 years ago. That's for French musicians going, for example, Norway, the promoter. More often than in the past, doesn't want to pay for the travel. So this is for my company to have to find the cheapest way to go. So the cheapest way today, this is the plane. So this is a real problem because this is more often, and for this kind of tour, of course, it is easy to find help from Spedidam or Adami to pay for the plane, but for one-shot concerts, we don't have, for example, in France, we don't have help for this. So you are musicians, you have your company, you are in front of this guy, he says, I don't pay for your travel. Okay, so I will take the plane and I will take the more.
No, so you need more concept.
Yes, of course.
Even with this more.
Yes, but as I explained, it's something really, really hard. I have this problem in May. I will go in Trondheim. I sent Ernst gave me contact to help me. Nobody answers. So there is no network. The network is not. I don't know exactly what is the problem.
Yeah.
I know it's
maybe for certain countries,
for
a few countries, we have some specialists in France.
Yeah, but
so one guy knows this area and this country, and you can ask him to find more. And we have others for.
We need in Norway.
Yeah. And in Norway, maybe it's not. At one point, if it's not possible, we can say to the promoter it's not possible.
Yeah.
For someone like you, now you play a lot, so sometimes also you can say, no, if I need 2 or 3 concerts, it's not a good way to work. So sorry, it's not possible. Maybe next year, so I have more time to find another.
But maybe it never happens.
Yeah, but
this
maybe
is a risk.
You are in between. You can start to say no as a musician. Sometimes not.
It's a big risk. For the moment, regarding the situation, the global situation, it's a big risk for a musician to cut.
Peter Wood, the drummer, he was offered the Danish drummer. He was offered, I don't know the whole story, but he said, no, I don't want to go to Japan for one shot. I'm not going this. I'm going.
It's an express situation.
Yes, this is. And then you say no.
We can start with the express situation because in this case, the carbon footprint is really huge.
One shot in New Zealand, it's not possible.
That's why it's really interesting to have the figure because sometimes if we have all the figures, you can say no, that is really huge, and some other times, okay, I can take this flight. It's from my year. You can calculate everything.
But the fact that the flights are still much cheaper sometimes than the trains is politics. I mean, that's something where we should really put the pressure. I mean, in Finland we have this now going on the
we just discussed. It's not going to pass.
It's not going to pass. What is it? Aloite in English? that people try to make
Initiative.
Yeah, exactly. Initiative on putting tax on the flights, because if we don't change the structures, then I mean, these are really what can we do then?
That's
We have to put
it's interesting because
yes.
I totally agree with you. I mean, like you cannot really compete when airlines are in a race to the bottom. Like Ryanair, all these low-cost airlines. I'm sorry about Ryanair, it's an Irish thing. But they've created this market where it's a race to the bottom, and they make their money in other ways. But it goes back to the kind of the power of a pan-European network and what that might entail. I mean, I don't know if it's a pipe dream or not, but if, for example, EJN went to Trainline EU or something and basically said, look, we've 150 members from whatever, 16, 18, 23 countries or whatever, and this is a PR story for you to kind of basically artists traveling on planes, here are all the horror stories, artists traveling on trains, this is what it would look like, and it's not a huge market, but it is a definable market. And I think that's where the kind of, because the structures just won't change by themselves, you know what I mean? Like, it goes back to Antoine's, capitalist point, which is
But they can also be changed, like not this kind of like really big things, but for example in companies or in organizations or like Goethe Institute. I mean, there's this rules that we have to always choose the cheapest traveling way of traveling, but why? Someone has made that rule. But what if we say that it's the how you choose the way to travel is ecological, but you have to choose the most ecological. What if there was another rule for that? I mean, that's a structure we could fight to change.
But if you are doing Trondheim in May, it's 4 other festivals in Norway at the same time, and they cooperate.
Exactly, Stavanger,
not just
Bodø, Hamar, Balestrand, and Stavanger. So
tour sorted.
Ask the Dane.
What strikes me again is that this has to be. We all mentioned the fact that all of that is possible through public fundings. Culture is possible through public fundings. So you mentioned that trying to find some examples and some policy, because it has to be a public policy at one point. Decided. Nowadays in France, public policies and funding go through different scope, but one of them is gender balance. So next year might be one more carbon footprint, and saying your venue or festival, so you have to welcome at least half of your programming that would be part of a tour. At least 3 gigs, so that you reduce your carbon footprint extra. It is
but it's a great example. A great example is, and people don't agree. Sorry, Antoine, but the key change. Everybody's familiar with key change.
What is the program?
Key change. Yeah. I mean, some people don't agree with the concept of a 50-50. 50% male, 50% female. There is issues with how that is parsed
and how it's calculated as well.
Yes, exactly, completely. But it hasn't stopped people from signing up to be part of that. And it hasn't stopped the movement or the ideology around it. So if there could be a similar thing, and actually, Pierre, it could come directly out of Jazz Connective, to be fair, a sort of a carbon change, thing where people need to sign up to it. And, there's also a sense of, you mentioned about capitalism earlier, and I was thinking actually about moral superiority, which is like some people like, to do that because they feel like they're taking a kind of a moral high ground.
When we say that and when we try to set up this kind of thing, the key change, the study we made in France, and a possible one day carbon footprint program, whatever. We one more time we just doing good students. We're gonna be the good students compared to the rest of the music industry that doesn't give a shit about that. Because this is also the truth. What I mentioned before is that how many festivals are welcoming names from wherever the fuck outside from Europe and through big planes, and the audience is also doing that again. So the example you took about Ireland, but making understand also the audience what the impact is quite relevant. But this is something we also have to think about, because, for example, if you take the example of gender balance, for example, in France, I'm just going to take the example of France. When we have finished the study we've done, you just realize that the people you interviewed and the people who answered the questionnaire and are the good people. They care. What about all the other that doesn't give a shit? And we also get some public fundings, maybe less, but they do because of what. Even if you're a big festival in France gets some public fundings also, but they don't, work on that. So I think it's a global work. It's a global work that first needs to be done by everyone. And what concerns me is that we're doing that to musicians and to I would say an ecosystem. I don't know in English how you say that. Ecosystem. That is already weak, and where the economy is already tricky. So,
so are you saying by adding more stipulations in an already fragile ecosystem, we are probably, increasing,
digging our own grave?
Okay, yeah. Okay.
At one point, yeah. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just wondering because saying that we took the example. We can take two. Okay, the promoters. We're gonna ask some at the promoters. Okay, be careful to that the musician doesn't take the plane. Nowadays, you mentioned it. It's true. I went to Paris to Nice by plane. It was 100 euros. If I took the train, it was 300, and it was, of course, shorter, etc., etc. Okay, so that's the first thing. So it's money included in here, and the other side, there is no public fundings more. I don't. It's not the time where you have more public funding. And the other side, we're going to ask musicians to do this effort as well. And probably to skip some dates because it's too far, too expensive, too carbon footprinted, based. And so we are already in a weak ecosystem. So we have to think this very carefully. And that's what I meant. I'm not saying it.
No, I think that's a very realistic and a pragmatic point,
yes, pragmatic.
Right? Because we need to think on a practical, level about this. If we're going to,
because something that Charles didn't mention about what he's doing, and is that I don't have the exact figure, but 70% of your money is public funding on this kind of project. 70%.
Yeah.
Who is in Europe can? I don't know if it's 70, but I think it's 65,
50 and 60. Yes.
But it's massive. It's massive. So.
It's massive, but it makes sense because in France there is also a lot of. So I created a system in which it's public funding is wise. So for €1 you have a lot of.
I know. I'm just saying that behind that, if you want to be wise, and if you want to think about that, you need some money, and you need the public funding. It's not that it can be private funding. If you have some kind of an oil company that want to redeem itself,
There is a second big issue because I'm not sure that a big festival with 10,000 person in the audience, with one band from Australia, will not have a better footprint than us.
But that's the exact same change.
So that's why it's a double discussion between the footprints and the artistic goal of the.
I was just gonna. You're talking about existing frameworks.
Come closer to the microphone.
There are two based in the UK. There's Julie's Bicycle, which is involved with the Grain Train thing, and there's also one called Music Declares Emergency, which is basically rock, and it's got like Radiohead, Massive Attack, Michael Stipe, people like that involved in it.
Music Declares Emergency.
Yeah. The website is just musicdeclares.net.
Okay.
It's basically a sort of activism thing, but still, it might be. I don't think there's any jazz people involved in it so far, but there should be. Why isn't there?
No, Julie's Bicycle have been involved with. We do a festival called 12 Points, and we did a conference on sustainability 2-3 years ago, and they came and did a presentation, and it was really good. I think it's a silly name, but it's a fantastic organization, and I'm sure there's a history behind that. But they have tools for artists on their website about how to have a green rider, how to, you know what I mean? Very practical.
What's it called? Julie's Bicycle?
Julie's Bicycle, yeah.
Oh yeah, she made a speech in a GA.
An example from Norway, the foreign department, they're paying a lot of support to musicians to go to, for instance, Japan or the US. Not because the Japanese or the Americans are shouting, oh, we want the ban. It's because they can, because they get support from the government to fly to Tokyo, to do 2-3 jobs and go back. So we have to try to talk with the politicians too. Stop doing that, because it's ruining the world.
Yeah, it's the same with the export funds, so that musicians can get like some travel funds, but they do not take like, so you take one flight and then you have to have minimum 3 or 4 concerts to get these funds, but they don't really care how you travel there. So for example, entering that you can have only one flight to get somewhere and then you have to travel by a train or some other, that could be also a solution. But these are policies that we have to influence. These are political aspects.
And
even more.
One small thing in Kongsberg Festival. Kongsberg is a city, a small city, where the weapon industry is really big. The weapon industry, they are exporting weapon to countries we don't like. And last year, it was a clarinet player from Oslo. He started his own festival in Oslo at the same time, and booked musicians and talked with musicians and to boycott Kongsberg. I know there's a lot of musicians who don't want to go there because they are doing this. Yeah, and it's the same. It's the same. We can. The musicians can do it, and the promoters can do it. And to stop this.
But this is also a political thing, because most of the community in Kongsberg is employed by the company which exports the weapons. So it should be first one tackle the weapon company and then the festivals.
Yeah,
because for the community it's something is happening, but it's the other way around.
It would be a good festival at all. To stop this.
So there's two different dilemmas in a way, I see, which we all like to travel, we all like to getting to know each other, getting closer. In the old times we were just like maybe once 3 times in our lifetimes able to travel to Far East or wherever. Now we can do it whenever we want, and we know the advantage of it because of we getting to know other cultures, getting closer. And on the other hand, the other dilemma, as I can see, is that we were overfunding, and we have to look where the funding, how to use the funding, and the conditions of the funding given by the state or the governments. So it's funny. It's just my point right now. It's not a statement in a distinct direction, but it is. Just like we are into
a good balance between these two facts. And I think it's a good conclusion because well, we have to close the discussion right now. Thank you all. It was really interesting.